What's the longest you can stay awake for before your brain starts to break down? In 1963, a 17-year-old high school student decided to find out. Randy Gardner decided to do something for his science project that nobody had ever properly documented before. He was going to stay awake for as long as humanly possible. On day 1, he felt fine, a little tired, but still able to joke with his friends. By day 2 to 3, his eyes struggled to focus, he couldn't follow a TV show, and became irritable. He had lots of mood swings and began to lose basic coordination. Then on day 4, he started hallucinating. At one point, he convinced himself he was a professional athlete for the San Diego Chargers. And he also thought that a street sign was a person and started having conversations with it. By day 5, paranoia started creeping in. The scientists observing him began noticing what they called incipient delusions. By day 7 to 9, his hands were trembling, his speech started to slur, and he couldn't finish sentences because his thoughts started to fragment. He couldn't have full coherent thoughts. On day 10, when researchers asked him to count backwards from 100 by 7s, he kept stopping halfway through because he'd forget what he was doing. And by day 11, his face went flat and his voice turned monotone. But here's the strange part. That same day, he beat the lead researcher, Dr. William Dement, at 100 straight games of pinball. Crazy. 264 hours and 25 minutes after he last closed his eyes, he suddenly just stopped. He'd set a world record at the time. And according to scientists watching him, he came really close to losing his mind. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. We spend roughly a third of our lives unconscious. A third. If sleep wasn't absolutely essential, evolution would have deleted it a long time ago. So what is actually happening in our brains? What happens the moment we close our eyes? And what really goes wrong when we don't? By the end of this video, you'll know why your brain is more active during sleep than when awake, why one night of bad sleep impairs your driving worse than 2 beers, and why pulling all-nighters is one of the worst things you can do for your memory. We also find out what is really happening to Randy Gardner's brain by day 11 and why. Alright, let's get into it. So here's the first thing that surprised me when researching this topic. Sleep doesn't fully shut down your brain. It's actually quite the opposite. Parts of your brain is more active asleep than awake. When you drift off, your body enters a nightly maintenance mode. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows, your muscles relax, sometimes so completely that you're temporarily paralyzed. Meanwhile, behind closed eyes, your brain is running through a precisely choreographed sequence of states. It's filing memories, it's flushing waste, it's repairing tissue, and it's regulating hormones that control hunger, growth, mood, and immunity. You are, in a real sense, kind of a different organism when you're asleep than when you're awake, and that organism has work to do. So sleep isn't just one whole thing, it's actually a cycle, and you go through that cycle multiple times a night, each cycle lasting roughly 90 minutes. There are 2 big categories: non-REM, non-rapid eye movement, and REM, rapid eye movement. Non-REM has 3 stages on its own. Stage 1 non-REM is like the doorway. Your brain waves slow down, your muscles start twitching, and you're still easily able to wake up. It only lasts for a few minutes. Stage 2 is still light sleep, but deeper than stage 1, and during this stage your body temperature drops, your brain waves slow down and start producing these short bursts of activity called sleep spindles. Hold on to that name, we're coming back to it. Stage 3 of non-REM is the deep stuff. Slow wave sleep. This is when your brain is producing massive, slow delta waves, and it's the hardest stage to wake someone up from. Have you ever shaken someone and tried waking them up but couldn't? They were probably in stage 3 sleep. This is when your body does the most physical repair. Tissue growth, muscle recovery, immune system maintenance. Then there's REM. Your eyes start rapidly moving around under your eyelids. Your breathing gets irregular. Your brain activity ramps up to look almost identical to when you're awake, but your body goes into temporary paralysis, so you don't act out what's happening in your head. So this is where most of your vivid dreams occur. Here's something interesting. When you sleep somewhere unfamiliar, one side of your brain actually stays more alert than the other. Researchers call this the first night effect. It's like your brain doesn't fully trust the environment yet, and it's protecting you. Dolphins do a much more extreme version of this. They literally sleep with one hemisphere at a time, so they can keep breathing and stay aware of their surroundings. Early in the night, you spend more time in non-REM, but later in the night, REM stretches gets longer, which means that if you cut your sleep short, you're disproportionately cutting REM, and we'll come back to why that matters. Here's one of my favorite discoveries in neuroscience. For decades, scientists wondered, every other organ in your body has a lymphatic system, a network of vessels that flushes out cellular garbage. Your brain, the most metabolically active organ you have, didn't seem to have one. But in 2012, researchers found it. They called it the glymphatic system, a play on glia, the support cells in your brain that help run it. This system becomes dramatically more active during sleep, especially deep non-REM, so stage 3. When you enter deep non-REM, your brain cells actually shrink slightly, by about 60% in volume in some studies. That opens up the space between them, and cerebrospinal fluid rushes through, flushing out metabolic waste that built up during the day. One of the proteins it clears is called beta amyloid, the same protein that, when it accumulates, it's associated with Alzheimer's disease. So when you skip a night of sleep, you're not just going to feel tired the next day, you're letting the trash pile up in your brain. Now let's talk about why students who pull all-nighters are doing it wrong. And I used to do this. While you sleep, your brain is replaying the day, specifically your hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain. It takes the new memories you formed during the day and starts transferring them piece by piece into long-term storage in your cortex. The process is called memory consolidation. Remember those sleep spindles I mentioned? The little bursts in stage 2 of non-REM? Those bursts seem to be the mechanism that lock memories into place. People with more sleep spindles tend to perform better memory tasks the next day. Studies have actually shown that if you learn a skill, then sleep, then test yourself, you'll often be better than you were when you first stopped practicing without any additional practice. Your brain practiced for you while you were out. REM has its own job. It seems to be especially important for emotional processing and creative connections, taking distant ideas and linking them. There's a reason sleep on it is such common advice when you're stuck on a problem. So what's actually telling your body when to sleep? Two systems are working together. The first is your circadian rhythm, your roughly 24-hour internal clock. It lives in a tiny cluster of about, I think, 20,000 neurons in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and its main timekeeper is light. So light hitting your eyes in the morning tells your brain to wake up, suppress melatonin. Darkness in the evening tells it to release melatonin and prepare for sleep. Here's a wild experiment. When researchers put volunteers in caves with no clocks, no sunlight, and no time cues, their bodies drifted to a 24.2-hour cycle. Not exactly 24. Your internal clock is almost perfect, but not quite, which is why you need the morning sunlight to keep resetting it. The second force is sleep pressure, also called homeostatic drive. So from the moment you wake up, a chemical called adenosine starts building up in your brain. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine, and the sleepier you feel. Sleep flushes it out. Fun fact, caffeine works by blocking receptors adenosine binds to. It doesn't make you feel less tired. It just hides the tiredness from your brain. I actually talk about it in a previous video. These two systems normally line up. You feel awake during the day because your circadian clock is firing wakefulness signals, and you feel sleepy at night because melatonin is rising and adenosine has been accumulating all day. And then there's genetics. Some people are wired to be morning larks. owls. Others are more night owls. There's a gene called PER3 and a handful of others that influence your natural chronotype. There's even a rare gene variant, a mutation in DEC2 found in a small number of people who genuinely thrive from 4 to 6 hours of sleep with no apparent ill effects. Lucky them. If you're hoping that's you, statistically, it's probably not. Less than 1% of the population has it. Okay, so what happens when you don't get enough sleep? After one bad night, say 5 hours instead of 8, your reaction time drops, your attention wavers, and your mood gets worse. Driving while sleep deprived is statistically comparable to driving drunk. After a week of lack of sleep, about 6 hours a night, studies show cognitive performance keeps declining. But people actually stop noticing. They usually rate themselves as fine, while their performance looks like someone who's been awake for longer than 24 hours straight. A few specific findings that surprised me. Just one night of poor sleep can reduce the activity of your natural killer cells, the ones that help fight viruses and eliminate tumors, by up to 70%. Sleep-deprived people tend to also eat 300 calories more the next day, usually from high-fat, high-carb foods, and your hunger hormones get thrown off. Ghrelin, which makes you feel hungry, goes up, while leptin, which tells you you're full, goes down. Long-term sleep deprivation is linked to a pretty big list of conditions: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, weakened immune function, weight gain, depression, anxiety, and increased risk of dementia. And in the most extreme case, there's a rare genetic disorder called fatal familial insomnia, where people lose the ability to sleep at all. It's as the name suggests, fatal, usually within a year or two. We don't have a treatment, which is one of the strongest pieces of evidence we have that sleep isn't optional, it's absolutely critical to our survival. Alright, so how much sleep do we actually need? The honest answer, it depends. For most adults, the sweet spot is about 7 to 9 hours. Teenagers need closer to 8 to 10, and newborns can sleep 14 to 17 hours a day. Older adults need a little bit less, though their sleep tends to get more fragmented. But within those age ranges, your number depends on 3 things. Age. Younger brains need more sleep because they're doing more developmental work. Genetics. Some people genuinely function on slightly less, while others need slightly more, and that's largely written in your DNA. Lifestyle. If you're training hard, recovering from illness, or under high cognitive load, you'll need more. If you're sedentary and stressed, you might feel you need more, but the issue might be sleep quality, not quantity. A decent rule of thumb: if you wake up without an alarm feeling rested and you don't crash mid-afternoon, you're probably getting enough sleep. Even if you are carving out the time to sleep, a lot of things can sabotage the quality of sleep you have. So for example, light, especially light from screens, suppresses melatonin and pushes your circadian clock later. The hour before bed is the worst time for it. Then there's alcohol. Yes, sometimes it helps you sleep faster, like knock out faster, but it wrecks the architecture of your sleep. It suppresses REM sleep, fragments deep sleep, and you wake up unrested even after 8 hours. If you have irregular schedules, going to bed and waking up at widely different times confuses your circadian system. Your body never knows when to release melatonin and to lower cortisol. Consistency, even on weekends, is one of the best things you can do. Sleep disorders. Conditions like obstructive sleep apnea, where breathing stops repeatedly through the night, insomnia, restless leg syndrome, and narcolepsy are far more common than people realize. Sleep apnea alone affects close to 1 billion people, and most don't know they have it. And then there's stress. When cortisol is high, melatonin can't do its job. Stress can really affect the quality of your sleep. It's important to reduce stress in your life. Yeah, so Randy Gardner survived, by the way, and in the short term, he recovered. He slept about 14 hours straight after the experiment and then went on with his life. He didn't suffer the catastrophic brain damage that the scientists were afraid of. But decades later, in interviews, Gardner revealed he'd been struggling with severe insomnia for most of his adult life, and he believed it was a long-term effect of those 11 days. Researchers don't fully agree on whether the experiment was actually the cause, but Gardner himself said that pushing his body that far was one of the worst things he had ever done. But the real lesson of this experiment wasn't that you can push your body to those limits. It's that sleep isn't a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. It's a critical part of how your body functions, where memory is processed, where repair happens, and your brain resets. The version of you that wakes up tomorrow is shaped in part by what happens when you're asleep. So tonight, when you close your eyes, remember that your brain is taking care of you and doing something that your body fully depends on. Cool, right? Amazing. Dude, brain is awesome. Anyways, see you later.